All right, we're all good.
Frank, I think you're muted.
And after I clicked it and everything too. So good morning, everyone. We do have a quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. The time is 10:02 a.m. Everyone, please be so kind as to mute your microphone and join me in the flag salute. If you wouldn't mind standing and if you have a flag handy. All right. 1, 2, 3.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Lisa. City Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Gavinia,
Here.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Here.
Member Bustamante,
Here.
Member Edry,
Here.
Member Lopez, Member Lopez,
Here.
Member Ibarra.
Here.
Is Member Froberg on the line? I don't think so. You have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And City Clerk, do we have any changes to the agenda?
There are none.
All right, in that case, may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll
Is-
second.
Can you
Lopez.
remember to state your name, please? I'm sorry, who made the motion?
So moved, Mark Gonzalez.
Thank you. Motion by Vice Chair Gonzalez, seconded by Member Lopez to approve the agenda. I'll call the roll. Chair Gavinia,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Aye.
Member Bustamante,
Aye.
Member Edry,
Aye.
Member Lopez,
Aye.
Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, perfect. Now we will take public comment from members of the audience. If you would like to provide a public comment through Zoom, please click the raise hand button.
There are no hands raised in Zoom.
Okay. In that case, we will now go to presentations.
Thank you, Chair. The item before, item number 1 is selection of chair and vice chair. It is appropriate at this time for the council to, or sorry, for the committee to select its chair and vice chair for the upcoming year. Chair Gavinia is eligible to serve an additional term. And the code requires or requests that each position be filled by a different type of member. So if you would like, a motion would be appropriate to select the chair for the coming year.
I'll make a motion to nominate Frank Gavina.
I'll second. Lopez.
Motion by Member Edry, seconded by Member Lopez to nominate Frank Gavinia to serve as chair for the upcoming year. I'll call the roll. Chair Gavinia,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Aye.
Member Bustamante,
Aye.
Member Edry,
Aye.
Member Lopez,
Aye.
Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Motion carries. Now it'd be appropriate for a motion to select the vice chair for the coming year.
And there's no restriction on that one. Presumably Mark can continue to serve.
Right.
So I would go ahead and move that Mark continue to serve as vice chair.
I'll second. Lopez.
Thank you. Motion by Chair Gavinia, seconded by Member Lopez to select Mark Gonzalez to serve as vice chair for the coming year. I'll call the roll. Chair Gavinia,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Aye.
Member Bustamante,
Aye.
Member Edry,
Aye.
Member Lopez,
Aye.
Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We look forward to serving for another year, and we'll do our best. So with that, we'll go on to the consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar may be approved with one motion. Items may be removed from the consent calendar by any committee member. Those items removed would then be considered immediately after the consent calendar. Do any members wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Are there any public comments for the consent calendar?
There are no hands raised in Zoom.
In that case, may I have a motion for consent calendar item number 2?
I'll move. Lopez?
Seconded Gonzalez.
Thank you. Motion by member Lopez, seconded by Vice Chair Gonzalez to approve the consent calendar. I'll call the roll. Chair Gavina,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Aye.
Member Bustamante,
Aye.
Member Edry,
Aye.
Member Lopez,
Aye.
Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. With that, we will now go to new business.
Item number 3 is fiscal year 2022-23 docket 1 Vernon Community Fund Direct Service Grants and consultant Jamont Rollins Group will present the item.
Good morning. It's great to be with you. I think we can go through each of the recommended grants one by one, unless you direct us to go through them as a whole and then vote on them as a whole. Which Chair Gavina, should we?
I would suggest that you go through each of the grants and then do one motion at the end.
Okay. So the first one, may I preface this by saying we had 38 applications totaling, James, how much money was requested? Close to $2 million in requests. So this was a challenging docket for us because we felt that every grant application needed to be looked at. And then we had to find King Solomon or somebody to decide which ones would be most appropriate to bring into the docket. And I really want to appreciate Diana and Scott on the Vernon staff for helping us think this through. There were many ways that you could go. You could take 38 grants and divide it into the amount of money in the fund and everybody would have gotten, you know, a little bit of money. Or we could look to prioritizing according to what may be pattern, if not practice, in the work that we've done. So we've tried to prioritize grants to organizations actually based in the city of Vernon. And we've tried to prioritize grants to new organizations that haven't had funding from the grant fund before. And then we still had 25 or 30 grants left because we only had a couple of new grantees, grant applications. And so we went about as a team sorting out, looking at their budgets, what they proposed to do, where was the fit? Most of the applications were for core operating support to support the organizations that still coming off the COVID pandemic. Many nonprofits, it's pretty common knowledge now, have suffered enormous losses, and particularly in LA County, there's such increased demand for services. So we tried to focus on the direct service organizations and those that serve a mix of populations, young people, older people, different population groups. So this is really our best thinking at this point, and the ones that that we believe will address the priorities of the Vernon Community Fund and continue to contribute to the good work that the city does by funding these organizations. So with that, there are no questions. We'll start with the California Derby Dolls, which is Vernon's own, based right in the city of Vernon, the only banked track roller derby team well, it's the fastest growing. It's a nonprofit, and with space in Vernon, and which attracts many members and volunteers to the city. The recommended amount is $25,000. However, they requested $40,000. And this is up from $15,000, which was their last approved grant. And they did fulfill the requirements of the previous grant and managed to sustain themselves during COVID when they actually had to shut down. They were able to pivot in some ways to keep some of their instruction and training going and hold their teams together. Any questions? Okay. Comments? We'll move on. The next one is a new applicant, the Cal State University Auxiliary Services, for a project. And the project is called the LEAF, L-E-A-F project. And it's the LEAF Accelerator is an opportunity for undergraduates at Cal State LA to experience hands-on business development, business education. They're focused on young women of color and focused on students in the Vernon catchment area. It offers a paid opportunity for individuals selected for the fellowship to develop entrepreneurial skills and plan, while it also supports existing BIPOC, Black, Indigenous people of color, including all marginal populations for the most part, business owners to get additional assistance from the expertise available through the university and from the research that the students and their faculty supporters provide. They requested $50,000. They're a new applicant. We were able to work with them to waive most of the university's fees associated with managing grants. And we're recommending a $20,000 initial grant investment for this program. Questions or comments? I hope you all have had a chance to read through these. I'm not going through them in a great amount of detail, unless you'd like me to.
There are no questions on Zoom or no hand raised.
Great. So then we'll move on to Chicas Roqueras. This is another returning grantee requesting $60,000. We've recommended $25,000. This is an organization that supports young women who are trans and gender expansive youth and girls who are artists or budding artists to provide, I guess what we would say extracurricular. It doesn't take the place of school, but it offers them the opportunity to develop and practice their talent and introduces them to entree into the television, film, entertainment industry. It reduces the stigmatism often associated with these young girls who are or trans people who are labeled and treated differently in different environments, and their research, and they do have an effective evaluation component, shows that the participation in the program has had a very positive impact on the individuals and on the organizations with which they're associated. They are located just outside of the city of Vernon, but they certainly include students from the major schools in Vernon, Maywood, Huntington Park, and Southeast LA. They requested $60,000 and we recommended $20,000. 25, I'm sorry. James is over here scrolling for me while I'm on the screen. This is a trick, a new skill for both of us. So I don't see any hands or questions.
There are no hands raised in Zoom.
Thank you. Girls on the Run of Los Angeles is also a returning grantee. They requested $20,000, $27,000. The recommended amount is 20. This program engages large numbers of girls from different schools and recreational venues in and around the city of Vernon, and they primarily develop as runners and participants in the various marathons that are held. It's a chapter of the international organization. It combines physical training for the minimum of a 5K run, but it also fields many of the girls in the big marathons. The girls are met and served in primarily public venues in and around the city of Vernon, the parks, etc. And it has, again, as an outdoor activity during the COVID era, has proven to be an important experience and continues to support kids who otherwise would have maybe limited options for outdoor activity, and also it focuses on health and nutrition. Any, I don't see any questions.
There are no hands raised in Zoom.
Thank you. Helping Hands Society of Los Angeles. This is a returning grantee and one of Vernon's own. I think many of us have had the opportunity to encounter the family, Sheila and her husband, who created this nonprofit to provide food and nutrition to people who literally need to depend on these kinds of resources to afford to eat. It was established in the city of Vernon in 2020. And as you can see on the write-up, they managed to provide almost 500,000 pounds of goods and distributed to organizations. Many of these organizations are in and around Vernon, although they serve a countywide and even beyond area. They are very visible in Vernon. They are extremely supportive of the businesses in Vernon. The businesses support them. They have a donated refrigerated warehouse and refrigerated truck, and obviously they are able to take advantage of the many food processing plants. They get donations all the time from other businesses in Vernon, and they are really enthusiastic members of the Vernon community. They primarily serve poor and underserved. They do keep some records. Really, you just have to show some identification, you know, if you're picking up large bundles of food. So they aren't really tracking specifically, because that would, you know, most of it is done by car pickup. People don't necessarily walk in there, although they can. And most of the labor associated with this effort is voluntary. And they serve people 5 days a week. We're recommending $25,000 last, and they did complete their objectives in the previous grant, which was, I believe, their first grant. So it was 15,000 was the first. So we agree that because they demonstrated and completed early, you know, their goals in the first grant, that a $25,000 grant would be appropriate. No questions or comments?
There are no hands raised in Zoom.
Thank you so much. The Human Services Association, as you can see, with a budget of almost $32 million, is one of the oldest and longest serving community organizations in the area, mostly in California. They requested $50,000, and this is a project that is rooted in the Presbyterian congregations in Southeast Los Angeles that provides poor and underserved families with a variety of social services. This project that they're proposing especially focuses on families with older members who need home based assistance and perhaps transportation, including medical, other kinds of health-related benefits, but sometimes also just companionship. They use both volunteers and staff members, and they expect to maintain a roster of 50 to 75 clients over the year. If any of you have had the experience of contracting home health services for older family members, you realize the cost benefit on this is left blank on this application, but the cost benefit is really remarkable, because this can cost a family anywhere from $15 an hour at living wage hourly rate for someone to come in the home several hours a week, all the way up to $75 an hour. So to provide this service free to qualifying families with seniors who are most often isolated and alone, I think we agreed that even though it's a large organization with considerable resources, the focus in our community and on residents in the Vernon area merits another grant to the Human Services Association. And we recommended $45,000. And with that, I would say you realize that for all of you, as well as for us, grant making is both art and science. And so the science of it is really looking at someone's budget and trying to approximate what is the cost of this service to them, and what is the benefit to taxpayers or families, et cetera. And then you know, what is ultimately its value. So in an era when we've seen so many programs lose funding, this seemed to be a very useful way to supplement an organization and activity. And of course, when we do the grant agreement letters, the agreement is written up to hold them specifically responsible for the populations in our community and to do the work that they said they were going to do. It doesn't get absorbed into their larger general fund. I see no hands or.
There are no attendees, so it would be through the chair if people on the committee had questions. I think
Okay.
you're good to proceed.
Terrific. The Southeast Community Foundation is another of Vernon's own. It began as a tutoring organization in 2015, and it still remains based in Vernon in a donated, maybe low rent at this point. Building. Was there a question from?
Oh, I was just flagging. I think member Edry may have had a raised hand.
I did.
Oh, let me stop and go back. Go ahead.
So I wanted to ask for those applicants that are repeat applicants, are you asking them about previous use of funds or sort of auditing them in any way?
Well, we would not use the word audit because that would have specific meaning in terms of nonprofit finances and management. But we do, and we do not request formal evaluations, but they do submit a report and show us how the money was used. And so whatever formula that the organization that receives the money, whatever way they cost it out in terms of benefits, sometimes they just actually show us their budget. This is how much time was spent on the project. This is how it was staffed. This is how many people participated. And these are the results. And sometimes they will share with us anecdotal evidence from participants. Sometimes it's in photos, sometimes it's in news articles. Often it's when they are referring to the project on their website. So we check all of the sources, but we did not request, we have never requested an actual audit. When they submit an application, they're in the nonprofit world, the IRS Form 990 really is used to explain how well an organization is managing its finances in the context of its charitable purposes. And so we always review the 990 to make sure they have a track record of using all of the funding that they get according to the nonprofit federal tax designation. Does that help?
Thank you.
You're welcome. So we're back to the Southeast Community Foundation. They have expanded greatly and still doing important work. Of particular concern is the enormous and negative impact of COVID on students and students' test scores. So the Southeast Foundation is focused with high quality tutoring to bring students to and above grade level in the important core skills. And they are adept at helping to bridge the digital divide so that students who may not have access to broadband in their homes are also provided with the equipment and means of communication with tutors, even when their classes are not, their groups, they're not classes, are not meeting in person. All of the tutors are experienced and credentialed teachers who work with them. And they, you know, we've been able before COVID to see the operation. Particularly, it's so close to Vernon City Hall. So we've been able to observe the students and their families who gather in the afternoons for these services. And it's the kind of learning environment I think I would wish for my grandchildren and others, that everybody there is open and accepting. It's a positive environment. And I would dare say it's fun, and that it is a rich experience. And I think that when people think of the city of Vernon, this is not a picture that would come to mind of students gathering in this renovated part of a factory and having lessons and improving their test scores. And they do measure results and work very hard with families to bring students to grade level and beyond. So they requested $75,000, and we're recommending 25. Go ahead. This is a hard one to say sometimes. Libros, Schmebros. We've all taken a stab at saying Libros, Schmebros Lending Library, which is located in Boyle Heights, was founded in 2010. And their annual budget is now up to almost $350,000 a year. They've been a returning grantee in the past, and they've even presented at the Vernon Community Fund grant meetings when we had in-person meetings. They are a unique lending library. They don't charge any fees, and they don't require any identification. So for undocumented families, it's a very safe place to be able to access literature, and literature in their native languages, as well as literature about the community in which they live. It's almost completely voluntary. The library has become an established part of the Boyle Heights community. It offers many events at the library. It's seen as a gathering place in the traditional sense of how libraries previously may have functioned in communities where people go, discussions are held, presentations, art is on exhibit, they go to street fairs. They are very focused on being community driven and community responsive. They requested 50,000. We are recommending 30,000. They are a returning grantee, and they, as I remember reading their final reports, they far exceed the number of individuals that they expect to serve. uh, I can just say for all of these, when we went through the 38 applications, we did have to exclude some people because there were problems with their 990s or problems with where their location was, but none of our returning grantees were posed any problems, and all of the new grantees totally fall within the ordinance and the expectations for giving of the Vernon Community Fund. We point out the challenges that organizations face, and we don't see them as very high risks. They are the challenges that most organizations face. And obviously the big ones, keeping your doors open during COVID or continuing to pivot and provide services if you can't have people meeting in person. And when your contributions, your donations from individuals, as well as from expected or previous sources of income drops, that's always a challenge for an organization. So as you read through these, you're going to see there's no organization that has no challenge. It's just every organization is challenged. It's how do we mitigate that and say to you, the committee, that if these funds are awarded, that we don't see any problem with the organization prevailing and doing what they set out to do. And we help the applicants structure their applications so that they don't set themselves up for failure by promising to do too much and moving beyond their reach or moving outside. Many organizations want to tell us how much they do outside of Los Angeles County and Southern California and all of that. So that's not important to us. You know, we want to know how focused you are on the communities that we're concerned about. So all of these applications have been vetted in that way. How are we doing? The Los Angeles Center for Law and Justice, they've applied to us before, and I think this is the first time we're actually recommending a grant to them. And the reason that we think this is a very good grant for you to consider is because of their focus on undocumented people in the Vernon area who require legal services. And they have really staffed up with immigration lawyers who have a great deal of expertise in doing this work. Oh, I see they were a returning grantee. We did give them a grant before. Can I just see down the bottom there? Okay. So as I said before, we had so many applications that I didn't actually get to do the analysis on all of them. And so this is one that another consultant did, which is why I wasn't aware that we actually had funded them, but let me see what but the final report was reviewed, and they continue to provide a high level of and quality of service. So I can vouch for them in that sense. I just want to see. Exactly. So I would just add that a significant portion of their client load is devoted to those experiencing domestic violence and having to deal with court and court visitations and child custody and the complications of all of that kind of legal work in the face of their undocumented status can be a significant problem. And we know that domestic violence increased significantly during the COVID era. So we can anticipate that the need for services to support those who are experiencing domestic violence would also increase. And we try to take that into consideration in grants like, in recommendations like this for the legal aspects, but also in terms of some of the housing aspects of our recommendations. And truly recommendations for recreation and the kinds of family support where families are really struggling with lots of issues that could lead to dislocation and homelessness. Okay. So the Neighborhood Music School Association, well, I was delighted to see that they were performing at the Vernon Chamber of Commerce event. Is that tonight or last night? So that's a nice connection that I was unexpected, but this is a returning grantee and an organization that we have supported because of the excellent work, again, that they provide students who are low income and who could not afford private music lessons, an introduction to the arts. They emphasize the significance of the arts in improving academic achievement. They have a facility that is open and embracing and welcoming of families, regardless of culture, language. They are an important part of the community. They're the parking lot, I don't know whether it's theirs or it's very close to the council district office, that they have concerts in the park. They put the talent of the students on display and encourage them to pursue, their creative ambitions. It has a long history. It's over 100 years old. They partnered with the Disney organization to provide online classes during the pandemic so that students did not lose touch with their levels of skill. They provide scholarships with the funding from Vernon to over 100 students, with 123 students. So $30,000, that's what they requested. What are we recommending? Back. So we're recommending $30,000, but yeah, you can do the cost benefit. Anybody who's really better at math than I am, $125,000 into $30,000 for a year of music lessons, which are at least one time and perhaps sometimes twice a week for students, is a very important cost benefit. Moving on. This is a new organization. I will tell you how I think it's pronounced. It is the Soul Shanali Sister Project. It's a project devoted to the care and well-being of indigenous women. And they form these circles of wellness for indigenous participants. And this has become an important issue in our communities because members of the indigenous communities are often mistakenly embraced or expected to speak Spanish or to be considered Mexican American or other Latin American populations, and yet they are distinct. They are often native people. Their languages and customs are very different. And so it has become important to recognize that there are significant numbers of indigenous people and communities in our area. And as with everything else, if you are trying to get people vaccinated or get them services or help them eat better, and you don't understand their culture or know their language, and they can't communicate effectively, that is a barrier with often negative consequences for these communities. And so there's a strong effort now in the public health community to reach and identify indigenous populations and to make certain that they have access to the full range of public services that they're entitled to and that help to keep our communities healthy. And of course, the way to do this is to reach the women. And so the women's circles have demonstrated that they are an important way to engage families and communities to better understand and support indigenous people. So this is a new organization. Frankly, for as long as I've been around philanthropy, I have not seen many foundations address this need, and I think it's important that that we recognize, just as we do with other so-called minorities, that this could be a significant part of the population and that we want to embrace and include in the benefits of being in and around the community of Vernon. They requested $30,000, some first-time applicant. The recommended amount is $20,000. Go down there to the risks. I just wanted to point out that they, back up just a little bit, yeah. They say that they will serve, or that 2,000 indigenous individuals from Vernon will benefit from education and mental health wellness support. And you probably noticed that they have a small board, 3 people, the minimum number of people required for a nonprofit board. And I suspect that it's because of the language barrier. They probably speak in their native languages frequently. So having a board meeting in English would probably not suffice. I think this is something that we would point out to them, that we would like to see the governance strengthened, but it wouldn't necessarily represent a huge risk because they do have county and other kinds of grants that they successfully manage. Was the recommendation 25 Diana's putting up and not 20? Did I misstate? Go back, please. Is that this one, Diana?
Yeah, I think there was a last minute correction to that one. So on the docket, it's presented as 25,000.
Thank you.
Sure.
We had a lot of that. So the recommendation is for 25,000. You want to change it on there?
I can't change it on here.
We
but
can't change it on the
it is on the
recommendation right now.
transmitter report.
On the transmit
Well,
report, it's changed.
it's showing as correct on the final docket that the committee received, so we're okay. I just
Okay.
wanted to let them know that that was correct, the number there.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other? Okay. Southeast Churches Service Center. This is a returning grantee. Again, this is an association of churches. It's not one individual parish, and they're a string of churches in the southeast area. Each of the congregations facing its own kind of limitations in terms of maintaining a congregational base. The organization receives funding, has received funding from us before, and they have performed well. Their expenses have changed because they no longer are maintaining a physical space with public access. So the recommendation for funding, they requested 72,000, and their last grant was 50,000, which they performed well, but they also had space and congregate activities then. And so with this recommended amount of $20,000, they will still be able to provide the direct services, which for them is emergency utility and rent payments. If you look at their budget, almost all of the money, very little of it goes into administration. And what they do is for people at risk of evictions or having their utilities turned off, they will intervene and pay the utilities and try to get the family stabilized so that they don't have to leave their residences. And, you know, once your utilities are shut off, that's sometimes the gateway to homelessness. Again, volunteers who do the work and a very small staff. And they've performed well on prior grants. And they're primarily based in the Huntington Park area. And as I said, the report, if this grant is approved, we would expect to see that the budget was expended primarily on providing emergency direct payments to utilities to maintain families in their homes. We're good? The final one. Woodcraft Rangers is a returning grantee. They have had a long association with the schools in Vernon and Maywood and Huntington Park. They provide after-school programs, which is important for working families to know that when school is out there, kids have a safe place and a nutritious meal after school. But in the past, they've provided camperships to students, primarily from the Vernon School, to spend 5 days at a camp. Where's that camp? it used to be up by Big Bear, but somehow I think they've gotten a new facility up near Tehachapi. And the students are able to go away for a week. And for many, it's their first time being away from home and having sort of quasi wilderness experiences and learning about nature. And we have heard firsthand the reports from some of the kids and their families. It's an important respite opportunity for families. I guess once I hear the joy and excitement in children's voices when they come back and report, you know, how they have experienced all these new ways of living together and being part of a camp community, that influence on their lives is just something that's adorable. The costs are free to the parents. Other foundations, the Dodger Foundation and other corporate donors support this campership program, as well as the activities of the Woodcraft Rangers. They've performed well, and it's Camp Woodcraft near Idlewild. Again, for 30 youth, I think we'll see, we're recommending how much? So they asked for 30,000 and 28,000, I think is the amount. So I think that the 30 kids will be able to go for $28,000. I think that when the grant agreement letter is signed, it'll indicate that 30 young people from the Vernon area are going to be served, that they'll find the $2,000 from somewhere else. All right. Is that it? This was a big docket. What do we usually do? Well, one time we did 13, right? But I was younger then. This was and usually if we do 13, we only have 13 applications, but getting through 38 to come up with this is was a challenge, and but a wonderful recognition that the fund is becoming so well known and that people want to be part of it. So we can't complain. Do you have any questions or comments about the entire docket? If not, Chair Gavinia.
Yeah,
Thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. And this would be the time if there are any questions for staff.
I don't have a question. It's more of a comment. I had a meeting with the superintendent of LAUSD, and one of the things that was brought up was the need for tutoring, especially in the Southeast LA area. And I know one of our organizations that you brought forward, that's what they do, is tutoring services. And I was just wondering how the rest of the committee felt in terms of like supporting, possibly giving them more funding, just because the need it's there because of COVID and so forth, and parents' inability to pay for private tutors in these areas. So I was just wondering how the committee felt about that.
Is that taking away from somewhere else, or?
Potentially, yeah.
So who do we pick from taking that away?
I don't know.
Welcome to our world. Yeah.
See, I'm trying to look at the list and see if there's because that kind of thematically is within the educational realm, right? So would there be a similar like for like educational organization you could shift funds from maybe Cal State LA University Auxiliary Services.
I thought about that one too. I did.
Is that, I mean, an obvious question, is that in the packet that was sent yesterday? What you're reading off, Chair Gavina?
This one is, I'm just looking at the list of the organizations. So yeah, it's on, what page am I looking at here?
Right, all of the agenda materials will share the recommended dollar amounts for all of the organizations Fran just reviewed.
Okay.
So when you think about this, if I could just tell you that you can change amounts. Diana, I think, would comment on, you could take $1,000 off of each one and come up with $15,000 or $13,000, however, or you could take pieces of, like we had to do 2,000 so that it's not as dramatic, or you could eliminate one. You could just
Can I ask a question? So if you get these funds, then you would turn them over to LAUSD, or would they have to apply?
If I'm not mistaken, I think Member Lopez is trying to maybe allocate additional funds to Southeast Community Foundation, which focuses on tutoring. So they're already on the docket or recommended as a recipient of a grant award. She's suggesting maybe giving them a little bit more of the
Okay, because I thought I heard her say LAUSD. I not specifically the organization.
Yeah, that's in that whole catchment. LAUSD's the main school district for our whole area and surrounding communities. And I mentioned that I had a meeting with the superintendent along with other elected officials that are trying to implement more money towards tutoring to help support students. And I thought that that's really important because of COVID and so forth. And being that it's one of the main issues that was brought up by the superintendent, I felt like maybe we should try to support the children in the areas and communities surrounding us with tutoring services.
And Mark, it's page 11 on the docket is the one I was looking at. Page 11 has like a list.
Yeah, I just pulled it up, sorry.
Yep. Yeah, no worries.
So to Fran, as Fran described, you're certainly willing to or able to make any decision related to the funding and how it shifts around, but an easy way to do it would be to take maybe $1,000 from all of the other recommended grantees. That would give you an additional $12,000 to roll into Southeast Community Foundation. It doesn't really impact the total award that significantly for the others, because it would just be $1,000 that you're taking off, but then you would be able to give Southeast Community Foundation that additional funding.
I mean, I think personally, I think early educational intervention is very important, right? And we're kind of in an underserved area around here, so seems very reasonable to me. If the rest of the committee is on board with it.
I would, if I could weigh in with something, I would say, looking at this, Girls on the Run, if we didn't fund them this time, they could come back next year. I think that would have the least impact. At this time, because most of what they're going to be doing is in the spring. And if you're following a lot of the elections and the funds that are coming into organizations for physical activity, youth, recreation. I would say that we could consider a grant to them in the future. And that would have the least impact on organizations and on, just the awkwardness of giving, taking $1,000 off of everyone, just the odd numbers. I'm not, it's just something that as I look at it, jumps off the page at me.
Fran, what is the amount that was allocated for that organization?
20,000.
20,000.
And they don't do their program until the spring?
It's mostly
So they have an opportunity to reapply for in the upcoming.
I mean, if you're a runner and you know that people will, run all the time, but to respond to your point about the more urgent need for tutoring and making up for the actual losses to students. If you weighed them, I would say that I would agree with you, and that you could make a more significant difference for a group of students by using the money for tutoring.
And does it make sense at all, Fran, to entertain the prospect of, because if we had peeled off 1,000, that would have raised 12. If you just cut theirs in half from 20 to 10, you kind of pick up 10 and they still get 10, or does just going all the ways?
That's another way to look at it. I was trying to see the cost benefit for increasing the number of students and tutors for Southeast Community Foundation. I think to get a greater benefit, that you'd need more than $10,000 or $12,000. They use experienced teachers that get paid, yeah, if you're going to increase the number of students and pay for the quality teachers, I think we'd want to do more than $10,000.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's never fun taking money from one organization. It's doesn't feel great, but I mean, given everything that has gone on over the last couple of years with kids, stuck remote learning, and how that has really affected and will continue to affect educational outcomes for probably decades, unfortunately. Like the impact on a kid early in life is big. I think that's a very reasonable thing to do, and to kind of allocate that money towards the local youth.
So is anyone going to be making a motion, or are we?
I was going to ask, from a nuts and bolts perspective, how do we shift the allocation? Do we need a motion, or is it just instruction to staff?
There is a raised hand by Clara.
Oh, there we go.
Yes, no, my question was, before all this was discussed, that I was thinking that maybe, it was previous conversation, so I can just lower it. It was if we just removed some allocation and as a group, the total, move it towards the new proposed tutoring. But that already was discussed, so I can lower my hand.
So if I believe, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, it would require a motion that just corrects the dollar amounts or removes a grantee from the list that was provided in the agenda packet. So you could propose approving items number 1 through 12, eliminating item number 4, and then specify the dollar amount, something along those lines. You could just kind of correct the recommended action to reflect what you were interested in doing.
Gotcha.
If the committee provides its direction, I can help you with the motion.
I think giving more funds for the tutoring program is of more benefit to children than, some of these other organizations like physical activity and so forth, just because the need is so great because of COVID. I mean, I'm a social worker and I work with families, and some of these kids didn't log on at all because their family, to remote learning, because their families didn't know how to navigate the system, how to get on, or they didn't have internet, or, other issues. So I do see that there is a much greater need for children to be at an academic, their level of education versus, some of the physical education and so forth. And like Fran did mention, I feel like they can reapply for the next, because more and more students are falling further and further behind if they're not getting the support that they need.
Sorry, just to go back here, and I'm sorry, Ms. Lopez, what you wanted to add, you wanted to take away how much from the Cal State side and then add it to the who?
Well, I don't know who to take away. I mean, I don't know if it was, I know Fran mentioned maybe the, I forgot the name of the organization.
Girls on the Run.
Girls on the Run.
If we withdrew the recommendation for Girls on the Run and put that $20,000 toward the Southeast Community Foundation, I think that would address the issue that Member Lopez raised.
Which was that the Southeast cities were not receiving a lot of the funding, correct?
The focus on tutoring. She sees a need for tutoring at kind of the in the LAUSD students in the area, given everything that happened with the pandemic.
Oh, understood. I was just trying to figure out if it was the Southeast. I heard something about a Southeast cities piece. I wasn't sure if it was, because there's a lot of Southeast cities folks here who are getting stuff, but if it's the tutoring piece, understood. Okay, I see you.
So is the idea to just not give it to the organizations, the organization with the runners, or I forgot the name of that organization?
Girls on the Run.
Girls on the Run.
We would withdraw the recommendation to fund Girls on the Run for $20,000 this year.
Point of information, Chair or Fran, what page is the list of folks who applied but did not get it? Or not being recommended?
That's for Diana. Diana, do you have the list of denials in this?
I don't have that.
Right. We don't have the list that we did not bring forward the list of all of the applicants. So this was the list that was determined after the due diligence completed by the consultants to arrive at the, this place where as Fran mentioned, these organizations really uphold the values of the Vernon Community Fund and can have demonstrated in the past or through their submissions that they would be able to do this work.
Yeah, and I don't want to make it complicated. I'm just curious as to like who's applied in the past, who's redundant and getting funding again versus people who haven't gotten anything, who've applied several times and just haven't gotten anything. I'm just curious if there's a way to, if the consultants already do that, then I take back my comments.
I'm going to let James address that if you want a response from the consultants, or if you don't, we can move on. James does have the list in front of him.
Yeah, we keep the list internally of everyone who's applied and who's been denied and who is on the docket. Is that information that you're requesting, Mark?
Yeah, but if that complicates things, then I'm fine with this, and I'm happy to assist Member Lopez in making a motion to increase the Southeast Community Foundation.
It could make sense to get that information perhaps as part of the kind of like next meetings staff reports. Like perhaps we can see that info of who applied, or the total pool that applied and who got denied. Because I think that is helpful information to Mark's point, especially if you have kind of repeat applicants that have never gotten traction.
Happy to do that.
Are there also repeat applicants that were denied multiple times? Do we?
No, not multiple times. This was the first major challenge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Everybody needed funding, I guess. But like you said, it's a good problem to have. Word is getting out, and people are trying to access the community fund. So that's cool.
And it's also a lot of work on their part to apply for this grant. So we also need to consider that as well.
Okay, are there any public comments? I think I had heard that there was no public here, but any public comments on the matter?
There are no attendees.
Okay. So in that case, we may want to, if I understand everyone correctly, we would want a motion eliminating the number 4 grantee, Girls on the Run of Los Angeles County, and taking the $20,000 that were allocated to said grantee and reapplying those to grantee number 12, the Southeast Community Foundation, thereby increasing their grant from $25,000 to $45,000.
That's a lot.
Is it possible to just reduce versus completely cancel?
I had mentioned that, but Fran's recommendation was that, I guess, given the costliness of the tutoring services, that kind of the $10,000 may not move the needle much. And I guess it sort of makes sense because they asked for 75, which presumably they're asking because there's some kind of justification or rationale for that larger number. So
Sure, but there are also other programs available through the county, through the state, through the federal government.
Fran, the organization, you said it was Girls on the Run, correct? So we're just, I would, when you said that there's other, where else do they get their funding from? Was that on their application? Like, what was the purpose of the $20,000?
It was, they do get funding from a lot of various sources. I would say the purpose of the $20,000 was to create more of a focus. This is a Pasadena-based organization, and in the past, we have provided funding that helped them focus on students and girls in the Vernon area.
Oh, so they've already been awarded in the past. This is
In
just
the past, oh yeah, they have been. And let me see, we don't, Their annual budget is $622,500. They received a grant of $20,000 in the 2021 docket. Go down to, what did they do with it? We're trying to pull up the report. It's a little challenging here. They planned with the prior grant, they had planned to serve 200 girls in the Vernon area at approximately 11 locations. They were able to meet those expectations. They served over 300 girls in the Vernon area. 17 area schools hosted Girls on the Run. And over
Are there
50
300 girls in Vernon?
No, Vernon area, Mark. There's 8.
Well, I mean Vernon area. I'm concerned about cutting them completely rather than just giving them $10,000 at the very least, and then just increasing the difference of that to the Southeast Community Foundation so that it's at least a win-win at some point.
So was that a motion, Mark?
No, I'm asking for point of information to Fran if that would make sense, unless rather than just cut it completely.
So I'm trying
Who
to,
do they serve?
yeah,
Is it in our catchment?
yes, the 301 Vernon area girls. So we have 8 communities. They said 17 area schools hosted. Go back to that report. Yeah, we're summarizing their last report, and they served over 300 girls. So from Boyle Heights to East LA to all of our partner communities, they were able to, you're going too fast. Go back. So they completed the grant and application, and they served 300 girls from area schools. So there is a cost per girl student. It's much less for Girls on the Run than it is for the Southeast Community Foundation. If we look at the Southeast Community Foundation and what it costs to serve one student pupil, you get the sense that the Southeast Community Fund budget is less than half of that of Girls on the Run, yet the cost to provide the tutoring is much greater. So in effect, you're weighing that, it's simplistic to say quantity and quality, that doesn't work, but it just costs more to provide the kind of tutoring that the Southeast Community Foundation provides than it costs to engage girls in these 17 schools. Yeah. So if you say $10,000 to Girls on the Run, well, let's say they would serve half as many girls in the Vernon area. But if you take $10,000 and give it to the Southeast Community Foundation, it may not give you a significant increase in the number of students who would be eligible to receive the tutoring.
For me, I feel like the academic piece is so much more important, especially under the circumstances of what we've gone through over the last couple of years. But that's just my opinion. So to me, I'd rather support education this time around, just because the need is so great. And it like you mentioned about the teachers, like it's going to cost more to have qualified staff. to be able to run these tutoring programs.
I personally think that also empowering girls is extremely important and probably just as important. It's also a form of tutoring. It's also giving them life lessons. I see sports as an opportunity for life lessons. So I think it's also very important.
And I agree, definitely I agree. However, I also think that a child that's falling behind in school, their confidence is not going to be there. And if we give them the tools to be able to excel at school, then they're going to feel confident at school too, and about themselves. So I feel like it does both in a sense as well.
Friend, there's also kind of I guess a question in my mind, like assuming perhaps we pick up $10,000 from Girls on the Run, and I know I'm going to butcher this because it's kind of complicated, the So Shin Sister Project.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we kind of called out potentially some governance issues around the size of the board being particularly small. I mean, would perhaps cutting theirs down a bit, like peeling $10,000 from there, plus the $10,000 from the Girls on the Run, get us the 20 that we're looking for. Can you kind of speak as to that specific grantee? Would they still be kind of okay with 15,000 instead of 25,000? I mean, I guess I kind of have that question in the back of my mind, given sort of the potential governance exposure there, right? With the small board.
Yeah, I almost feel like Southeast Community Foundation gets a lot more funding than the one that we're cutting completely. So 10,000 would make a little bit of a difference, but at least give the Southeast Community Foundation a bump.
I tend to agree with you, Frank, about this. So if they have some issues with regards to the board, the size of the board, maybe we could reduce it and suggest in the future to increase the size of their board to be considered for additional funds.
Yeah, because I had kind of heard that they had raised potentially, or perhaps I misunderstood, raised the issue around like language at the board meetings perhaps, but these are very accomplished individuals. Like one of them is at the Keck School of Medicine. I'm pretty sure you can communicate pretty clearly if you're attending Keck. So I don't know if I'm 100% there on that being the barrier to a larger board size.
So I would just weigh in and say that nobody is going to turn down a $10,000 grant from anybody ever, in my experience. A $10,000 grant is a gift and it's always appreciated. I would resist offering technical advice to organizations on their governance unless you really, that just opens up, well, what other organizations have we done this for? Well, it just opens up areas that we really haven't been involved in before. It's doable to take the $10,000. It just changes the motion. It just needs a motion to, I think, if Lisa can correct me on that, it's your decision. There's no problem with, reducing, and we should stop calling these grants. These are recommendations. They don't become a grant until somebody gets a check. So these are recommendations, and the purpose of the recommendations is for you to weigh in on what you think is the best use of this money. So nobody's gotten any money and it's not going to be taken away from them. It's your recommendation as a group as how you want to see the funds expended. So if we call these applications instead of grants, I think we would sort of lower the the bar in terms of how much weight we're putting on these. These are recommendations. And James and I are sitting here like, yeah, you can do that. You can do that. You know, we've played this card game with Diana and Scott, like, well, do this much or do that much. So this is just another and very important to have the input of the grants committee. Perhaps the most important input is, how do you want to see these funds distributed?
And I agree completely, friend. Far be it from me to tell folks how to run their organization. I just call out, you know, you had mentioned that as a potential concern. So I was hearing you and taking that into sort of my thought process, but absolutely, we wouldn't tell folks how to run their organizations. So let me maybe take a stab, potentially see what the board or the committee rather thinks here, of a reduction of $10,000 to Girls on the Run. So they are still getting $10,000, and another reduction of $10,000 to Socian Sister Project. So they're still getting $15,000. And then Southeast Community Foundation goes from 25 to 40. So we take 10 from Girls on the Run, 10 from Socian Sister Project, and give those 20 to the Southeast Community Foundation. Can we live with that?
That's fine.
I'll second that.
I would only add that if it makes in discussion, there are two other organizations that serve girls specifically on this docket. So in the sense that Member Edry raised the importance of empowering girls, I think we have made some very positive statements, or you would positive statements, by funding Derby Dolls and Chicas Rockeras with those concerns.
So we do have a motion on the floor. It's the staff recommendation with Girls on the Run receiving 10,000, Socian Sister receiving 15,000, and Southeast Community Foundation receiving 45,000, and the others as indicated in the recommendation.
So moved.
Would you like me to call the roll on that, or is there discussion?
And we need a second as well.
We got Lopez, Member Lopez seconded.
Member Lopez seconded. Oh,
So it's appropriate for discussion on the motion, or if you'd like me to call the question.
I think we're good. I don't see any hands or anything. So let's move to roll call.
Okay, so on the motion, Chair Gavinia,
Aye.
Vice Chair Gonzalez,
Aye.
Member Bustamante,
Aye.
Member Edry,
Aye.
Member Lopez,
Aye.
Member Ibarra.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Fran, for the presentation as well. We will now go to oral reports.
I have a brief report for the committee, so I'll go ahead with that. Wanted to talk about our Vernon Fall Harvest. Yesterday, the city partnered with its Vernon Community Fund grantees to assist with the distribution of 1,000 turkey meals to families in need in the Vernon area. Proyecto Pastoral, the YMCA, Helping Hands Society of Los Angeles, Southeast Community Development Corporation, and East Los Angeles Women's Center, just to name a few, joined Vernon City Council and representatives from the local legislative offices of Assemblymember Santiago, Senator Gonzalez, Supervisor Hahn, and Senator DeRosso herself for a quick photo op, and then began the process of loading large quantities of frozen turkeys and meal packages into their vehicles for distribution. The partnerships nurtured through the Vernon Community Fund create opportunities like these. We are able to extend our reach to further support Southeast area communities. So just a reminder that the work that you all are doing is beneficial to everyone. Also want to share an acknowledgement we received from a Vernon Community Fund scholarship grantee. So we got actually a card in the mail, and I'll read you the message. To the Vernon City Council, my gratitude to you is ever present as you have provided me with such a wonderful scholarship opportunity. Because of such opportunity, I have been further enabled to pursue my collegiate level education to become an aerospace engineer. The city of Vernon will forever hold a special place in my life, and I will continue to share my accomplishments with the council. With gratitude, Alex Sebastian Hernandez. So that's a great note to wrap our meeting on, for sure. And I wanted to take a moment to remind the committee that the 2023 Vernon's Community Scholarship application window will open on January 1st, and it'll run through the last Thursday in March. So once you get that email from us, kind of as a reminder with the application and the materials, please spread the word. It's a great opportunity for those high school seniors that live or attend school in the Vernon area. So please pass that on to whomever you know. It's a wonderful opportunity for them. And we do have additional monies this year. Thanks to the committee, we have $40,000 to expend on the scholarships. So it'll be exciting to see how it all pans out next year. And lastly, I just want to say happy holidays to everyone. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you again in May of next year. That's it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Happy holidays.
All right, so without any further business, I adjourn this meeting at 11:38 a.m. And thanks for the well wishes, Diana. Happy holidays to everybody, and yeah, see you guys next year, if not sooner.
Great job, Frank.
Take care. Yes.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.